Hello, everyone. Welcome to Elevating Your Life. Thrilled to have you with us today. I am sharing a fantastic guest with you today. We have with us Trevor Griffiths. He studied medicine, neuroscience, and immunology at Oxford University before becoming a pioneering doctor for 25 years in systemic family health care, promoting healthy communications. He founded a charity to prevent illness and socially disruptive behavior by teaching about the rough end of emotional literacy. The Emotional Logic Center is now international on 5 continents with a strong and growing schools program. Trevor trains trainers and coaches with an aim to have every family be able to use emotional logic language to manage disappointments and setbacks in the most constructive ways. And his latest book, he explains a shift in thinking about emotions and inner heart values from which the transformational power of emotional logic emerges. And this is his latest book, Clearing Away, Unveiling the Mental Tricks That Hide Reality. And it is amazing. First off, welcome, Trevor. Welcome.
Thank you very much for the invitation, Paula. Thank you.
Oh, happy to have you. Happy to have you. Well, first off, is there anything further on your past that you would like to share, and maybe what triggered you to write this book?
Well, thank you. The path that moved me from medicine, where you're trying to treat problems, into leaving clinical medicine and founding this charity, which was a training charity, teaching about emotional dynamics, was the aim to try and prevent problems. If I can help people to communicate better about their intense emotions, then the chemistry of emotions isn't going to build up and start causing all sorts of problems to their immune system and their mental health and the relationships and so on. So it's about trying to prevent problems. And I suppose really honestly the background to that, without going into it in any great depth, is I did myself come from a very troubled family, and I'd seen the way the emotional dynamics within the family caused all sorts of knock-on problems. And so that's always been a dream of mine, to be able to work at that family level, but also the same principles of communication that go on in families are also scaled up into neighborhoods, into schools, into organizations. And so helping people to understand how their unpleasant emotions are actually there for good reasons, that they're not there just to spoil life, but they're inbuilt to us for part of our survival mechanisms. Why on earth are they there? Because most people, when they experience all the angers and the guilts and the depressions and the shocks and the fears, they just think, where does this come from? It's just ruining my life. They just want to get rid of these emotions. But I'd come to see that they're part of our survival mechanisms. And if we can understand what their useful purposes are and how and this is the key bit, the emotional logic bit, how these unpleasant emotions fit together to make a single integrated healthy adjustment process. So when we have a disappointment or a setback or a hurt, these emotions get activated in order to move us in a way that we can respond in a healthy manner. But the problem is we tend just to sort of knee-jerk react and say, I don't want them. This is spoiling life. We push them away. And people talk about negative emotions. And we're actually trying to do a complete 180-degree flip and help people to see it in a totally different way. And we actually say there's no such thing as negative emotions, only unpleasant ones that have useful purposes. And if you understood those useful purposes, you'd be able to harness that emotional energy in a constructive way into your conversations with people who you're maybe in conflict with or misunderstanding, or all sorts of disagreements and hurts can get set up. But this is what we found over the years when I was in general practice, and then afterwards when I've been running this charity, is people get it. Once we start talking to people and explain how these emotions are there for good reasons to help you to adjust. And I suppose there's a key phrase that might help people to sort of click into the level at which this is working. All right. If I were to say to you, Paula, tell me what your values are, right? Most people on hearing that question will say, don't know what you mean, really. A bit of food, a bit of fun, a roof over my head, family, but if I said, look, in this situation you're facing, like you've had a redundancy notice, someone's dropped out from university, whatever, you've got various disappointments. Right? In this situation, what are you worried you might lose? What's important to you that you're worrying that you might lose? And we help people to sort of name a list of losses. And then we say to people, you'd only name those things as a loss if they were things that you valued. So this list of a dozen things that you've listed that you might lose if you lose your job, it's not just the money, it's a routine, it's people's self-respect, it's meeting your friends, it's hope of promotion. And, we list all of these things, right? We say, actually, that list of hidden losses, that's a list of your values. That's who you are. That's what makes you a unique person. That's what makes you knee-jerk react in the world, and we say you only grieve. This is all these loss emotions are basically grieving, not just for bereavements, but anything you value that gets challenged. You only grieve if you've loved. If you weren't connected or bonded to anything, if you didn't feel any particular connection, then if you lost it, well, you'd just shrug it off. But if you love something, if you're bonded, connected, if it's important to you, you will grieve. And therefore we say these are not negative emotions. These are the evidence of the things that you love. This is your identity. This is who you are. And therefore, and when people get it, it's amazing. The lights go on in their eyes and they see themselves in a totally different light. Because most people, because they're basically good-natured, tend to be very self-critical. They if I'm getting these emotions, there must be something wrong with me. Get these emotions under control, just etc. But no, we're saying when you get these emotions, say, whoa, hang on a moment, something important to me is being challenged here. Let's take a bit of time out and have a look at what's going on. And that's what the emotional logic language, we hope, helps people to take that time out, take that step back and say, hold on a moment, we're heading into trouble here in this relationship. But there's something important that's troubling you and there's something important that's troubling me. Can we talk about what's important in this rather than just the way we're reacting to each other? And the method that we teach people, people find that they really can approach difficult relationships or difficult situations with a new attitude, a new energy, and a new hope. So we do see the sorts of impacts that I was dreaming might come about by teaching about this emotional level of things. So it's quite a shift of thinking from where most people are about their emotions, and so that's is me sort of going out on a limb a bit, really, because all the psychologists and the doctors and people and philosophers and so on are saying, oh, get rid of your emotions, get them under control. And we're saying something completely the opposite, really. No, your emotions are really important, but you need to harness them with your reasoning to get on and name those losses, reinterpret them as your values, and then build an action plan that preserves just one value in the situation that you're facing. And people can do it. They find they can do it. That's a little bit of the background. So coming from, troubled family into situations, seeing that, the impact of these tensions in relationships, the misunderstandings, the brokenness, expresses itself in emotional chemistry. And the emotional chemistry can harm the immune system and can harm your physical health. Everybody knows about how the effect of strain on the heart, strain on the stomach, all sorts that comes from emotional tension. And I suppose why I just love talking about it is because I've seen it work. People really can relax from those tensions, start seeing themselves as a person with values. And one of my coaches has made a t-shirt, got a t-shirt printed that says, if I've got values, then I'm a person of value.
I love that.
We're So although we're dealing with serious subjects when we talk about these things, we actually can be quite lighthearted about it because people do see a new hope. They do see a way forward. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I just love that. And that's, that could open up such a door and make such a difference when we go through these emotions. And would you say that also part of that is when we realize that and we can realize our values, we can accept the emotions we're going through?
Absolutely.
And maybe then have some trust and appreciation for our values?
Absolutely. And as soon as people get that idea that all these, what people call negatives, the angers, the guilts, the depressive feelings and so on, that they're not a sign of weakness. They're a sign that you've loved something. But the problem is we don't go on to name that. And the reason is when you get these emotions, you've got to name what you're worried you might lose. And most people think that's negative thinking. You've got to be positive thinking and get out there and, keep being the cheerleader, even though you might feel terrible inside. But actually, no, if we can respect those emotions as evidence that we've got values that are being challenged, and value taking a bit of time out and having a bit of a code word with the people you love, with members of your family, with colleagues at work, and usually one of the code words is, hey guys, I need a safe place at the moment. That sort of language that we can tip into people's way of living. And other people will then know that that person is experiencing a challenge and wants to find a bit of time out, maybe in a conversation, where we can just, hey, what's going on for you? What are you worried about losing? And all of emotional logic is just a structure to help conversations with the answers that you get to that question. What are you worried you might lose? Or what have you lost? And everything can follow on from there. So it's very practical. And children get it. I mean, it's absolutely marvelous seeing what happens in schools. So we have a age-related materials from 5 right the way up through. And there was one teacher we heard, sort of a 6-year-old boy in class. They make this sort of tree and they hang hands off it with the names of emotions and things like this. And this 6-year-old boy went up to the tree and took a hand off that said anger on it and took it to the teacher and says, teacher, I'd like to tell the class why I'm feeling so angry at the moment. Now, I think that's just awesome. That boy could have just acted it out. And so much would have happened as a consequence. He had got labeled as a difficult boy and all this sort of thing. But it led to a totally different sort of thing. With one secondary school, a boys' secondary school, introduced it into their first year of secondary school, of high school. They had a 42% reduction in confrontational behavior when all the children went in there. We're getting marvelous results with children who are often not in school because they can't face school in various ways. A lot of these children are fostered. They've got problems. 90% improvement in anxiety states because these children can just see themselves. They don't just see the troubled circumstances of their lives. Of course, they've got that. You can be honest about it. Yeah, but they see the emotional tensions within themselves, not as evidence that they're useless, that they're a wipeout, that they just get in the way, but actually see themselves as small human beings growing bigger. So yeah, it's very motivating when you start getting these bits of feedback. You think, hey, this is all right. Let's keep doing this.
That is so amazing and so wonderful. Oh my goodness. And it makes me think about, okay, have this anger or things I'm frustrated with and have that out there, but then you help them know how to see themselves and I'm me and, kind of have more compassion for themselves, would you say?
Absolutely right. Totally. Yes. And of course, if you can relax more with yourself, it really does something to your inner heart so that you actually radiate something different into your environment, and it makes other people feel more relaxed as well. Whereas if this person is a little tense ball of unexpressed emotion, everyone's taking a step back and thinking, this guy's unpredictable, we don't know what's going to happen next, you know. But when inside somebody they're saying, you know, this is quite reasonable, you know. We make these loss fraction worksheets, as I say, where we've got a list of losses down one side, and then we use a 7-step model of grieving, not the Kubler-Ross 5, but a 7-step one, and show the logic of how you move through those to a growth cycle. But we get people to go down this list and write in ticks of what emotions they're feeling about, you know, each of these losses they've mentioned. And honestly, if somebody's been in a difficult situation, 20 hidden losses down there. Somebody who has an actual abuse history, 3 pages of A4, they'll come out with hidden losses. Yeah. And then they fill in the ticks, and they look at, we've had people holding these sheets, and then they say, well, no wonder I feel bad. Yeah. And I say, absolutely. If you didn't feel bad, there'd be something wrong. Yeah. But as soon as people can see that they've got all these values, and then we guide them to just pick on one of those, it's the most practical one that you could do something about in the next 24 or 48 hours. That harnesses all that emotional energy that we've mapped. So that isn't just making you knee-jerk react in the world. You're harnessing that energy into seeing that action plan through, simply to pick up that phone and make that phone call to somebody. You know, that's the focus. And some people don't like the idea. You mean just a simple action like that's going to solve all my problems? It's the start of a solution. You're opening a process, because as soon as that works, suddenly you're thinking, well, I'm not so bad after all, am I? You know, and you've got a bit more energy to take the next one, and so on. So it just opens doors and changes the way we see ourselves. And then the next step on from that is, if we start seeing ourselves as slightly more reasonable persons and not part of the problem, and these emotions are not part of the problem, they're part of the solution, then when I look at somebody else's behavior who's being a bit difficult with me, right, and I suddenly might think, hang on, maybe you're grieving. Maybe you're reacting like that because something important in you. Maybe I ought to talk to you about what's important to you, not just what's important to me. And so empathy improves as well, and that depth of listening to each other. I've actually come probably to the absolute nubbins of this. A lot of people think that the most important human need is to be loved, and obviously that is foundational. But through all of my work, medicine and out in, you know, doing all of this sort of emotional work, I've actually come to think that the most important human need is to be heard. Right from our first cry at birth, that we hope that the response to our cry, to our communications, will be loving. But it's always amazed me that people who are in abusive relationships can still go back to the abuser afterwards, after they've had a separation, had some sort of therapy input. Maybe they will still go back, because it is even worse to be abandoned and isolated and not have anybody to hear you. They would rather go back somewhere where at least I'm heard, even if I am hurt or abused in some way. You know, they would actually prefer that to just being nowhere in a flat on your own in total isolation. We're not built for that. We're built to be together. And so that's what I'm hoping to spread through emotional logic, is the ability to be together through thick and thin, through all the ups and downs, not trying to pretend that everything's got to be beautiful and hunky-dory, and, you know, not trying to be positive all the time, but to own honestly, look, I'm feeling a bit bad today. Can we have a bit of a time out and talk about what's important, what's going on here, and just empower people with that language to get to what's important.
Yeah. And being able to say, it's okay if I'm feeling some emotions or I'm feeling bad.
Yeah.
Let me think that through.
Yeah.
I love that, what that can do for us.
Yeah. It's wonderful to see the transitions come about. Yeah.
You are
And
changing so many lives.
it's it's been bubbling around for a while now, and we've got some work going on in America, just starting up in a community project up in Oregon. It's taken off, so obviously in schools in the UK and so on, and a little bit of healthcare. South Africa is really getting embedded in systems of social work and so on. We've done a lot of work in other places. I mean, it's not. I don't want to give the wrong. We're not huge. We're widely dispersed. We've got to train people on to become coaches first of all. Well, there's a general level of training that for families, for anybody, and then some people can be trained as coaches to go in and help untangle people who've got really complex problems, abuse histories and so on. But then people go on to become trainers, so that they can then train people right from scratch. And so we've got a small number of trainers sort of spread around, but most of the trainers are in England, and we're trying to sort of move out from here at the moment. But it really can spread by remote learning or whatever, face-to-face learning. We can do various things like that.
Trevor, what could my audience, people listening to or watching the show, what can they do to get more involved in this and learn this and, help share this?
Yeah.
Amazing.
One of the really practical ways, thanks Paula for saying this, but I'm going to show another book. Yeah. So that you've shown the more recent one that came out, right? So I've got a copy here. So that's the more recent one. That's the theory behind why it works so well. Yeah. So for people who want to go into the background theory, and it goes quite deep into human nature, into whatever. But this is the book, Emotional Logic, that I wrote with my wife, Marion. Right. So Marion remained in medicine, and she did a lot of work in general practice with the emotional logic method. And, she and I sort of run this, well, the charity runs independently of me now. But this book here is 15 case stories, and it explains emotional logic through that. And in America, we piloted running reading clubs with this book. So a dozen people could get together and read the chapters through. They work sequentially to learn in that way, but they're all based on true stories of how it improved people's lives. And that just gets them talking to each other about things. So that's like an introductory level where just with a group of friends, or you could do it online, you can sort of pick up the threads. So that's emotional logic, harnessing your emotions into inner strength. Yeah.
I'm going to get a copy. I'm excited. Oh.
Yeah, that'd be fabulous. Now, the Emotional Logic Center, that's spelt with the English spelling, Emotional Logic, CENTRE.org.uk. If you went onto the website, and we run courses. So some people who've had a look at the book might want to do a Foundation Award course to really get to grips with it, so that they could lead book clubs, or and then maybe some might want to go into coaching. It depends on where you are. But people can add that coaching ability in as a skill into any other skill range they've got. Whether it's in counseling, psychology, in criminal justice system, you name it, social work, anywhere. It's a conversational skill that anybody can tip into their conversations to get to that level of humanity. So we're not just responding to your behavior. We're not just telling you to get your emotions under control. Inside that, there's a story. There's stories about your values. All right. And let's get to your values. Let's get through to this story of what's important to you. And you can build a future on just one or two of those values that'll give you the energy to connect with people, not to sort of defend or get aggressive.
And it can start with just one of your values. I love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. It's exciting. Yeah, it is exciting when people discover that. I mean, so in one of these groups in America, there was a bit of conflict between Democrat, Republican things. In England, we're that little bit distant from it. You're right in that. We really appreciate it. But in this town, two people from different political backgrounds got together about town development, about community development of the town, coming from totally different attitudes. They thought, when they went into what their core values were as to why they had this opinion or what they wanted to do, they found most of their values were the same.
I love it.
It's just that their actual plans of the whole background or other values. And I don't know exactly what happened after that, but the feedback I got was that it was a very creative conversation, and they became friends.
I love
and
it.
we have actually done work in Israel, Palestine, amongst the women, bring them together. There's an organization out there called Muzalacha that brings together Arabic and Israeli women. And they went through the same process in translated materials. We've got cards, mate. We've got these cards, triple language cards with Arabic, English, Hebrew.
Oh my gosh.
And they found exactly the same. When they were thinking about this, 80% of their values are identical.
Yeah.
And what the situation was that, of course, the people who are aggressive in their communities break any potential conversation between the two sides. It's simply they didn't know each other. Yeah.
Trevor,
so
we have about 1 minute left in the show.
Oh, have we really? Okay.
I know, it just zooms by. Please share your website information and what last words you want to share with everyone today. This has been so fantastic.
The front end is Emotional Logic, the Emotional Logic Center, all one string, englishcenter.org.uk. That's the practical bit. The new book that's come out, there's my website, personal website about the theory background is relatedness.net. That's all. Just relatedness.net. It's all about that quality of relatedness. And that, for me, it's all about being heard and valuing that little gap in time where we put down the energy that we're putting into so much and say, hold on a moment, there's something important going on here. What's the story? What are the values? What are you worried you might lose? Let's turn that upside down and talk about your values. Because if you've got values, you're a person of value, and so am I.
Oh, Trevor, thank you so much. I am just honored to have you on the show, and thank you for all the lives that you're affecting and the good energy you're putting in the world and the information. I am very grateful.
Well, Paula, thank you so much for the opportunity. Lovely. Thank you.
Oh, big hugs. Love, hugs, and blessings. And everyone, love, hugs, and blessings. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.